The phase 2 of this report did no sampling. We used phase 1 samples done by DEP, and we attempted to gather all other world literature, or privately held or government held information that would be similar.
Did you anticipate at any time that it may have been the legislative intent for there to be new independently taken samples from examples such as those presented by Delegate Manchin earlier, in locations where we had had direct complaints to the legislature? At any time was that anticipated that maybe we should have gone to a health department locally?
So if I hear the question right, it might be, did we wish we had more data that included those other places?
Did you act on those wishes at any time? That's
No, that was
why was that not an option?
We were given a very specific contract, and we did the contract. I hear you about what you would have, what would have been preferable, and more data in this instance, and in all instances, certainly also in this instance, would have been preferable. But we acted within our contract to analyze the data from the phase 1 study. And we asked for and received permission to, and put it in our contract, that we should get all data that we could obtain from any source. We were not asked to be the primary samplers. And in fact, you could argue, and I think it would be a good argument, that the government hires people already. You know, we could do that too. Paul's group can do that, but we were not asked to.
I would really submit that as an observation, and I'm sorry it is a question, Mr. Chairman, but that's what we anticipated as legislators. That's certainly what I expected. I was a little disappointed, but I do thank you for the information. It's certainly more than we had. Appreciate it.
Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of the sampling done in phase 1, what seams of coal was the slurry injected into?
I know I've got that information for each one of the mines.
Well, let me.
I know it goes from 5 block to, I think, Stockton is the last.
And so I'm assuming that those seams, I'm not familiar with those seams in southern West Virginia, but they are at different depths, correct?
Yes.
So was, of the 4 that was sampled, was there a pretty good mix of coal seam depth, would you say?
Yes, I don't think any of them were duplicated. And the other thing is that a lot of these mines, the prep plants, took coal from multiple seams. So the slurry oftentimes represented multiple seam mixes that were being run through the prep plant.
I understand that, but I'm talking about when it was injected, the depth that it was injected to. Did you see variables from different areas according to the depth of the mine that the slurry was injected into?
You mean the seam itself?
Yes. No, I mean the water quality samples that you studied. If one mine was injecting slurry into a deeper mine, was there differences?
We did not have elevations, water elevations at the point of injection. That was one of the, you're right, that's an important bit of information. We didn't have that. We had a rough idea what portion of the mine was flooded, what proportion was flooded, and all of them were, I think, less than 60% flooded.
But wouldn't it be relative? I mean, talking about Mike or Delegate Ross's earlier question, the depth of the mine, if it's below the water tables or above the water table, wouldn't that be? I mean, to me, as a layperson, that would have to be a huge part of the study, and that's the part I'm struggling with.
All of the mines were abandoned, and none of them were being pumped.
I understand.
So you would expect them to reflect the regional water table.
Yes.
At the point of injection, I'm not entirely sure whether they're injecting on a beach. In other words, somewhere up gradient of the saturated zone, or actually in the saturated zone. Normally,
I'm not talking. You're confusing me. I'm just talking about how deep is the coal mine. Okay, is the mine 200 foot deep that they're injecting the slurry in? Is it 400 foot deep? Is it 600 foot deep? And did the samples reflect any difference if it was injected into a mine that wasn't was only 200 feet below the surface or 400 feet below the surface? That's the part I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know that, I don't know how, I didn't have the, we don't have the pit floor contours on those mines, so I don't know.
So we don't know. And you said that data from 4 of the 6 sites were chosen, correct? Did I hear you say that?
Yes.
Because of the data that, run that by me again, that was handed to us from the mine operators?
Well, no, this is the data that we got from the SCR 15 report, phase 1. So in not every case did we have all the information we needed to actually do a mass balance.
You think the information just simply wasn't provided, or that it wasn't kept, or what do you think?
I'm not sure whether mine maps are available in all cases.
The phase 1 report, my memory of the detail of the phase 1 report is that it's clear the 4 sites were studied in greater detail than the other 2 sites. And so the 4 sites that were studied in greater detail are the sites that were most useful for our work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Snyder.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very brief.
That's great. Real practical question, and thank you, doctors. This is a very complex subject, and as we found from the speakers the other month, injecting any water, use clear bottled water, into this fractured geology is extremely complex, and every site's different. So I realize how complex this subject is. In looking back at the data you used, do you know if they were, for each one of these metals, were they analyzing for dissolved, say lead, selenium, or were they doing total?
Both total and dissolved were analyzed, and we used both and actually ran our analysis on both total and dissolved. We didn't really find much difference between the two.
Again, we're certainly dealing, as you said, there's a lot more study that really gets your arms around this. Many of the samples that some of the citizens from these areas, and rightfully so, come to the legislature bearing water samples, and they were all turbid, colored, so you've seen these samples. So certainly if we were analyzing samples that weren't similar to that, then you obviously have settable or suspended solids in those. And as physicians, if that's the case, that, and again, this may not come from cold slurry injection, but just the amount of water flowing, and it's a flushing effect, as I said, questioned some of the geologists, they said absolutely it's a flushing effect. The more water that travels through these mines, the more it picks up. If you ingest settable or suspendable or settable solids from that mine that makes the water colored, would not your intestines or your stomach acids turn that into dissolve and immediately release a lot of these others that would not be dissolved but would become dissolved in the gastrointestinal tract?
Great question. It depends on the species. It would vary. Yeah, so in a human body, it would vary. I'll give you just one example. Barium, which cold, barium travels with cold. Under most conditions, you can eat, and in fact, we give patients very substantial amounts of a particular type of barium in order to image their insides. But you can create, it's hard to do, but you can create a condition in which barium suddenly becomes very dangerous. And so you just have to, each thing is its own thing, and you have to be aware of what it is. And there's lots of different conditions that are possible. For some other metal, it might be the opposite. It's usually very dangerous, but we can create a condition in which you can eat it safely. Arsenic might be a good example of that. Arsenic is usually very dangerous, but when you go to your seafood restaurant tonight, it's actually much less dangerous, even though it's in the seafood. And there's reasons for that. It just varies by the metal and the condition.